There comes a time in the life of almost every church where they need to trim back on the church budget. Maybe things pop up, maybe circumstances change, maybe giving decreases, and as a result, they need to cut the church budget. But the question is, what do you cut? Well, I have good news for you. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the first 4 places that you should cut the church budget. And when you do these things, it's going to help you be a better steward of the resources God has given you. Here we go. A couple years ago, when I was serving as the administrator for our church, overseeing the church finances and budget, one of the things that I did was I talked with a couple of different banks about the merchant fees that they offered for our online giving. And one of the things that I discovered through this interaction with them is I could actually trim back and save some money if I just shop around these merchant fees. And so that's what I did. Yeah. And one of the things that was really cool about this was I was able to save a couple, I don't remember the exact amount, if it was $2,000 or $3,000 on average per month, simply by making a few phone calls, shopping it, telling the other bank what they're going to do, and say, well, this is what these guys are going to do. Can you match it and beat it? And lo and behold, we were able to save money. We trimmed it back, an automated expense with just a few phone calls, a little bit of work, a little bit of paperwork. And it was a massive way just to really cut back on the overall budget. And then we could, if we had that income or that money, use those dollars differently, or just spend less. Yeah, right. And so that's why today we want to talk with you about the first 4 ways to cut the church budget. Because the reality is there are times in the life of the ministry when you have to cut the budget. And as ministry leaders, we want to be good stewards. Yeah, right. We don't want to be just spending wastefully. Right. And oftentimes, more times than not, there's, it's not like money's just growing on trees for us. And you have something like happened earlier this year with COVID, and all of a sudden income decreases in the church, and you're like, we got to cut everywhere. Yeah. So that's why it's important for us to constantly be trimming back and really making sure that we're good stewards of the church budget. Now, I want to mention here at the outset, as it relates to just balancing the budget, we talk more about how to balance the church budget in episode 7. Right. So if you have not listened to or watched that episode, be sure to check that episode out. But for today, we're going to talk about the 4 ways to cut the church budget, or 4. There's more than 4, but the first 4 ways that we would recommend. So Dick, why don't you kick us off?
Well, the very first thing you should do is identify discretionary items. Now, this gets to be tricky because when I think it's a little bit laughable when you mentioned COVID, when we were using terms like essential services, like, well, what's essential? And in church world, what's essential? Right. What is discretionary? Yeah. No one would view their budget as discretionary. Yeah. Everyone would view my budget is important, no matter what my budget is. But the reality is, there are some things that you're going to spend money on. Let's say like utilities. You're not going to stop heating or cooling the building. You might turn the temperature up or down a little bit, but the reality is you're going to spend for that. There are certain things that are going to happen. Other things are things that when you look at it, you could view them that I maybe don't have to spend all of this, and it's a bit discretionary. All of it's important. So don't get people in the mindset, well, your stuff's important, my stuff's not important. That's not what we're doing here, but we're looking for places that we can take some money out and still keep the life and the ministry sustaining and moving forward, because we don't want to do things that are going to hurt the ministry or cut to the bone of the ministry. Mm-hmm. When you start moving discretionary spending, just don't get in the mindset where you say, I can't do this. Because you can. Yeah. There are always places to look for, small places to trim money, and that's the very first place you start.
Well, and it really comes down to a prioritization of all the different ministries and all the expenses. And like you said, it's not like none of them are non-essential. If they were non-essential, then we shouldn't be spending the money in the first place. Yeah, right. So it's not a matter of that. It's just a matter of, well, we may just have to sacrifice and not spend on something else because something different is a higher priority. Right. And so it's just shifting your mindset to thinking in terms of priorities. And it's like, well, you start with the top priorities, you move your way down, and then it's like, well, if we don't have enough for the 7th, 8th, 9th priority item, well, then
it won't happen.
Yeah.
And this is where you have to demonstrate leadership. Yes. And be able to carry the church through.
Yep. Okay, the second thing that we recommend doing is to reconsolidate or or it could be reconsolidate or renegotiate debt.
Right.
So let's talk about consolidation here for a minute. Maybe you've got some debt from different places. Maybe you come and work to bring it all together to a new, some new loan, or you get a new line of credit or something like that if you've got debt. Or it could be renegotiating, like I mentioned earlier, with merchant fees. And so, I'm negotiating with these companies that are, servicing our online giving. Could be your interest rate. If you have a mortgage or some other loans, you could be negotiating the interest rate that you can do that. Like, you can just call the bank and say, hey, here's where we're at, especially if you're a long-standing customer.
Right.
If you've got a lot of history, which is why it's important to be building these relationships.
Yeah.
probably ought to save that for another episode.
That's right.
Dick, you've got a few ideas on that.
A few ideas, yeah.
But renegotiate debt. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. No, that's good. And the next one.
The next one, I guess that's me also, huh? I should pay attention to the notes. Defer maintenance.
Yeah.
So we talked about this in episode 26, actually, about when you have maintenance, big expenses coming. And then one of the ideas we had in that episode, go back and listen to episode 26 if you haven't, was to defer things. Now, we talk more about what to defer, what not to defer, how to determine what you should defer. But the idea here is you can kick the can down the road for some things. You just have to be careful about it. You have to make sure you choose the right things to kick the can down the road. But that's a way to trim back. So maybe you were planning to refinish or reseal the parking lot and make it all look nice and pretty and paint new stripes for the parking spaces. And maybe that's one of those things where, as you're looking at the budget, you say, you know what, we need to kick the can down the road. We're going to try to do that next year instead. That's just an example. You have to be smart about it, but deferring maintenance is one of the things you can do.
Yep, it really is.
Okay, now it's your turn.
Now it's my turn. The fourth item, the last item here, is to trim nickels and dimes. Now, all of us get it that nickels and dimes all add up, but frequently in budget trimming, budget cutting, we kind of go, we got to look for this big thing to cut. Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, if you can find the big thing, great. More often than not, you're going to trim money by looking for nickels and dimes. Now, obviously, it's rhetorical in that sense, but you're going to look for $50 in this line item, $200 there,
yeah.
$2,000 over here, $850 over there. And when you add it all up,
yep.
then you're going to say, wow, we made a dent in this. Now, probably what you just need to know as a leader, you're probably going to pretty much successfully tick a lot of ministry leaders off because you're going to take a little bit out of a lot of departments. And I say tick them off. You, as a leader, you want to help bring these your leaders along to understanding the importance of the fiscal strength of the whole,
yeah. and why you're doing it,
and why you're doing it. So when their budgets trim back little dollars, but it all adds up to a bigger amount, your leaders can get the drift of what you're doing. But you have to pay attention to those small things added together because they make a big difference.
Well, and I want to just jump off of that because I know from my roles as a staff pastor, when I was a staff pastor at James River, the fiscal, all the money stuff, you don't really have the ownership. You don't really, as much as you try to,
yeah.
but you don't fully have the weight on your shoulders. You don't grasp it. And, but then, then when I moved, we started the new church, Summer Park, and, I'm overseeing the budget and the finance, all of a sudden I had a bigger grasp of, okay, wow, we got to make sure we're good stewards here. Right. And so I think it's important. I bring that up to just simply say, if you're a staff pastor, you have to put yourself in the position of the lead pastor and the weight that they're feeling and the financial responsibility that they feel. It's not, we don't have silos. We have to look at the church as a whole. Right. It's not just your ministry, not just your classes or whatever it is that your money might be having to be trimmed back from. You got to look at the whole picture. Lead pastors, I want to tell you, you have to, as Dick's saying, you have to paint the picture. You have to help them understand the whole, because that's what's going to help them to be able to buy in and say, okay, yep, I get it, Pastor, I'm on board.
Right.
And it minimizes the enemy's work that he wants to do and creating some division right. and strife over money, which happens
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, way too much. Let's do a recap here. 4 items here. Identify discretionary items. renegotiate debt, consolidate debt. Defer maintenance is number 3, and number 4, trim nickels and dimes. If you'll do these 4 things, you'll be well on your way to really having the kind of fiscal strength at the church that you need. Because I don't care how big, how small your church is. There are going to be times where you're going to need to go in the budget and do these things. And if you'll do them right, you'll see the Lord do good things in the future.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to let you know of a couple of things. First of all, don't forget the Kids Ministry Track, which is our new course for kids ministry, how to do kids ministry. We have released that, and it's available for you at a discount for the next couple of days. So you want to make sure to check that out as well. You can just go to churchuniversity.com, and that's where you can get all the information about that online course. And then also, we just want to encourage you to subscribe, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on podcast. Please subscribe. We want to be able to get the word out to others, and I might add even rate and review if you would, just to help us get feedback from you on what is helpful to you, and then as well, it helps us spread the word to those who need the same resources as you do. So with that being said, we'll look forward to talking to you next time. Until then, be blessed. Hey, Jonathan here, real quick before you go. Everything in your ministry rises and falls on your leadership. So investing in your leadership is essential to staying healthy and growing the ministry. And that's why I want to invite you to join us inside the Leaders.Church membership. This online streaming service for pastors gives you access to more than 300 videos plus training material to level up your leadership and improve your ministry skills. If you'd like to do that, I want to invite you to go to Leaders.Church/boost. Again, that's Leaders.Church/boost. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Church Tips Podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.